Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Be Hill Tuesday night, Be Hill Webshow. You all know, same time, same channel. Thank you all for tuning in thus far. If you're on Facebook, make sure you hit share. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe if you haven't already. I'm sure before the end of the episode, you're going to hit a like or a heart. Make sure you comment. We want to hear from you, okay? I'm so excited. There's so many things going on. Okay, we're approaching almost the end of September, but I couldn't close out these next few weeks of us just getting back in the groove of things without having one of my dear sisters on the show with me. And so I'm going to bring her in just a few moments. But like normal, here's one of our announcements, okay? If by chance you are ready to share your story, I need you to email us, behealedwebshow@gmail.com. When you say, Camille, ready to share my story, what does that mean? Well, your journey in life, here's the question that you can answer. If I was to ask you, how would you title your life story? What would that be? That's where you'll pick up. Okay. And so, hey, sis. Hey, Sister Mary. Sis, I miss you. I see the new God baby on the way. Praying for y'all. I'm just excited about tonight. And so without further ado, because you know I don't like to hold long, I need y'all to get in. I need y'all to like and heart. Let me tell you about Miss Andrea L. Collins, okay? Before she comes in the room, because she don't like me bragging about her, so I got to do it while she's in the green room. I got to do this privately. She can hear me though, but I don't want y'all to see all the blushing. So here's the deal. I met Andrea about almost 5 years ago, and you talking about like instant chemistry, instant sisterhood. Now, even though she rocks the pyramid and I rock the pretty kitty, we still are sisters for life, okay? She is a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. She is a mother of 3 amazing human beings. I won't even call them children because these folks, they're wise amongst their years, okay? So 2 boys and a girl. She is a VP in wealth management, but she's a VP over financial consulting. She is a proud ambassador of wealth management. For her, like I said a couple of weeks ago, you don't have to wait till you're in your older years for you to live better. I'm sharing with you, you saw Miss Asia Brown a couple of weeks ago. Now you're meeting Andrea Collins, another young woman, another amazing 40 under 40, right? One of the top 40 under 40. She is just, let me just bring her in the room. But she's an author. Let me just say that she's also an author. I have the book. Yes, I do. It's called Word to the Wise. Okay, by my friends are great. Look at that, Andrea L. Collins. She's an author. Check out the book. The books are being sold on Amazon, and we know all of us got an Amazon account. So go ahead and support her. Let me bring her into the room because let you hear from her. She's going to talk about the rhythm of God. I can't wait to dive into this to see just exactly what my sissy has to say. Welcome, Miss Andrea. Hey,
thank you. Hey. And
how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to need you to do one thing, though. You said 40 under 40. I need you to get in contact with Forbes and let them know, okay? Because
not a problem. Let's send this tonight. Look, I done made you on the only. I'm like, she is in there. Listen,
thank you.
And you know, I didn't even call out that you have your MDiv, okay, Master's in Divinity. I mean, not only do you walk the walk and talk the talk, but you can preach that thing too. You can execute that text. Come on now. So I'm so excited just to have you in my life, and thank you for being a sister, a friend, a financial advisor. You make good money moves, girl. So let's kind of just jump in, because when you sent me your title, The Rhythm of God, I ain't gonna front. I heard Rhythm Nation all in my head. I mean, we're gonna play it.
Whatever. I mean, look at my shirt, Spiritual Girl with the Hood playlist. So I mean, it is what it is, you know. So there's nothing wrong with that, and I was excited when you asked me to be on this show. Number one, because I just love you dearly. Number two, your content is amazing. And ever since we've known each other, we just had this instant sort of connection. You know what I mean? And there are connections that you have with people that sort of transcend like the normal progression of a friendship. And I would wholeheartically say that you are one of those very few people, you know what I mean, that instantly it was like, oh, I know you. Or I've known you for a long time, or whatever. If there was a past life, I know we were friends in that too. You know, you were probably a Delta then. You came back as a.
I hear you, but I'm going to walk away from that. I'm like, resist the urge to be petty. Resist the urge to be petty. You're not doing Zeta Chance tonight.
Okay. That was my only plug.
No problem. I love it. I'll take it. But wait, some of my sorrows is like, no, absolutely not.
No, stop. Okay.
My big sis Cassandra, she don't play that.
It's all love.
All love. When you mentioned about instant connection, I do believe that's real. And what I thank God for is that when we realize that God divinely introduces us to people, good, bad, or indifferent, he makes the introduction.
Absolutely.
And how we respond, what we learn, what we glean, he's involved in everything. And I'm so grateful that when I prayed a prayer years ago that God would send me greater relationships and connections with people who had more insight than I. And you're one of those individuals. And I'm so grateful for that.
Well, thank you. I have to, I guess, humbly accept that compliment. I just feel like, daily it's a practice, what I mean, have praying and accepting and the wisdom and discernment that comes with just living, what I mean, or actively seeking and wanting that. And I feel the same about you. I feel that iron sharpens iron, and that you are someone that I can call on, and someone that I know that perspective and the relationship with God that will give me an honest answer, about things that is enlightened, that has the willingness to share, you know what I mean? And it has the same amount of humility, so thank you for that. I really, really, really graciously accept the compliment.
Well, thank you. I do too. Now, honey, tell me how you've been moving to his rhythm. I mean, I'm let me get my popcorn. Listen, I'm ready for all of it.
That's funny that you thought of Janet Jackson Nation, because that was actually my first concert that I went to at the Forum.
Really?
That was my first real concert in middle school, and I will never forget. I'm sure none of us never forget our first concert. And Janet Jackson, of all people, a wonderful performer. But I think the rhythm of God, it sort of came to me, I want to say a couple of years ago. And you know how you just have moments of revelation, or when things are spoken to you, and you feel like it has no really rhyme or reason or meaning at a particular moment, but it was so eye-opening. Just that one phrase when it popped into my mind or was revealed, that I stopped in my bedroom and I wrote it on a Post-it, and then I put the Post-it right above my light switch in my bedroom. So every time I came in, or every time I needed to flip the switch, I was reminded of the rhythm of God, or to be conscious, of how God is moving in my life. And that Post-it is still on my dresser. I mean, it doesn't stick anymore because it's been years, and it's fallen off a couple of times, and I had to really rebuke the devil for trying to remove the message from my wall. And since it's now located on top of my dresser, but it's a constant reminder, you know what I mean, to be mindful of the way that God is moving in my life, and then in others as well, you know what I mean, because oftentimes our lives are so busy and just inundated with, whether it's meetings, family, obligations, social obligations, And I'll even throw in religious obligations as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. That sort of take precedence over you being still. Yes. And actively acknowledging how God is moving or how he has moved in the past in your life. And I wholeheartedly believe that it's to a rhythm, you know, and when you, that to me, it's just the thought of it is so beautiful. In as much pain, chaos, loss. I mean, we just went through or going through still 18 months of our entire lives being turned upside down. And even in the midst of that, there is a rhythm to that. I think it's important to pay attention to, and to really acknowledge what that really means in each of our lives individually and then collectively, because, you know, there's a collective rhythm.
Oh, yes. Come on.
Our own individual that we're moving and dancing to, if you want to, you know, use that same terminology in regards to music, you know, but I think it's just interesting to know that, you know, the rhythm refers to basically the length of time between each major beat in a piece of music. Sometimes it's a short period of time, sometimes it's a long period of time. And what we tend to notice is the beat, right? That's what gets us moving. Even when you're thinking about a song, it's the beat. That's what initially sort of like catches your ear. Like, hey, wait a minute, what's that? You know? Yeah. And then you start to move along to it. And that's the rhythm. You know? So it's like when you apply that to your life, it's like what is the rhythm of God in your life, and how often are you paying attention to those sequences? You know, it's really the sequence of sound and silence that make up a rhythm. What are you doing in the midst of those sounds or silence? And a lot of us are uncomfortable, you know, in silence. We're used to the chaos. We're used to making moves when something is catastrophic, you know what I mean? Or painfully obvious, like get up and go, you know, but it's a rhythm in the moments of silence as well, you know? So.
Okay, so we're going to pause because I'm being flooded with so much right now. Because, honey, you've been dropped. I don't know if people are catching it. So let me reiterate. Rhythm of God. You made it very clear that the beat is sound and silence, but how we move is the rhythm. Okay?
Exactly. The beat is what's steady. You know what I mean? That's that steady, like, you know, that steady pulse. The rhythm is the way the words go to the beat. You know what I mean? So,
but that's huge, because you have so many people who say they don't have rhythm. Like I'll be the first to admit, like when they be like, oh, everybody who Black got rhythm. No, not true. Okay, I come from a lineage.
Well, you know, me and you are in the same club. I think you know that Psalms 139, when we were being knitted, part of the stitch was left out, right?
I feel like that's when he dropped the thread, and then they just rolled. We're like, go get it, go somebody go. But you know, here's the thing. I'm so pumped because I feel like what you're saying is a message. Okay, it's a full sermon that can be shared with anyone, because, and as you're sharing it tonight, because you said, how do we respond?
Right.
And I just had this conversation earlier today that a person made a comment about me talking. And I had to admit that sometimes I'm uncomfortable when it's silent. And I equate it as an instructional designer, someone who works with words and creativity of paper and products and stuff. They always tell us in design, look, fill in the white space.
Yeah.
Right? Fill in the white space. And so you get accustomed to thinking that I got to fill in the white space or the blank space with something. But in reality, sometimes that white space is all you need. It's okay.
I know.
There's a break.
Exactly. And I think the irony in that is that it looks to us, but it's still space, right?
Yeah.
It still does have a dimension to it, right?
Yeah, come on.
So that's the part, and it's funny that you brought up design, because in design, if you think about the way that anything is designed, whether it is a website or like any sort of, like, let's say clothing or fabric or anything, there's three different elements to design, right? There's repetition, there's a pattern, and there's rhythm, right? Repetition is what you're doing consistently. And it's like the simplest form of an element that you can use. And pattern is a combination of those elements. So think about, like, if you have clothes or fabric, or even the way that we are designed, if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, there are things that happen repetitiously in our lives that we are trained to think like, God, why is it happening to me? Or you have a tendency to beat yourself down.
Yeah.
You may have feelings of condemnation, or maybe you didn't learn your lesson because of how we're trained to look at things that are repetitious in our lives. But when you think about design, the design pattern or fabric of anything, repetition is not a bad thing. It actually reinforces the point of something. It drives home a message. So when you look at repetition, let's say in branding or even marketing, if you want to look at it from a business perspective, right? Repetition of a brand, repetition of a logo, there are patterns. It's intentional, right? So when something is happening frequently or consistently in your life, even if you want to put a negative label or connotation on it, there is a message behind that repetition. There's a reason for the patterns, and those elements of design are meaningful, and just as much as it is. And if you, from a business perspective, if you want to look at it from the fabric or the design of your life, or how God created you, or what he created you for, repetition, patterns are necessary. Again, like I said, it reinforces the message. It reinforces what your purpose is. It also reinforces, if you really, really want to drill down to it or unpack it, it really reinforces who God is, right?
Yeah.
Listen. How often does he remind us who he is?
Because when you said that, I think about the word of God. From Genesis to Revelation, he is repeating himself.
Over and over and over and over.
I'm God.
Right.
And besides me, there is no other. Right. Love me with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and do good by other people.
Exactly.
Over and over.
And there's repetition, there's a pattern, and there's rhythm to God explaining and revealing who he is over and over and over and over and over again. We see it biblically, we see it in present day, and we see it, like in each other's lives. Like I said, if you really, really stop and pay attention to the rhythm of how God is moving.
I think what I'm hearing also in that, when you said repetition about things that we do in our life, I think one of the things is when you mentioned about no more condemnation, right? Romans 8:1, easily there. But for those who have not latched on to faith, those who have not latched on to the freedom of being in Christ, this is helpful. It's helpful for everyone. Let me say this. But it's even more so for those who might not believe, because it's saying, hey, if you find yourself in the same repetitive mode, this is where we can see where God is saying, my grace is sufficient for you. This is where you can see that I love you with an everlasting love. This is where you start to see those principles really take hold to your life. Because I immediately thought about Jacob. Because Jacob lied a lot. Like, he was just a liar.
Right.
But when he had a repetitive lie, he was always in this pattern of scheming, right? But when the shift happened, when he had that real encounter, he was never the same again. But it didn't change to the sense of, is new name change, and yes, any man being Christ is a new creature, but he was still physically the same person, right? But there was a greater change on the inside.
Right. And I mean, to me, that really speaks to even the promise of Romans 8:28, that God works for our good in all things.
Yeah.
Right. So going back to the repetition, I just say, I like to bring that up because sometimes we get so stuck on that part. Like, why do I keep ending back in the same situation? And of course, there are reasons. There is a message behind all of that. And the same way we will play over and over again certain songs that we like over and over and over again, right? On a continuous loop. It's because you understand the message, right? It's resonating with you.
That's good.
The same thing you have to attach to the rhythm of God in your life. Mission is there for a reason, and yourself to what the message is, and then dance according to that rhythm.
Yeah. Okay. So the person who might be watching and they're dealing with illnesses, sicknesses, diseases in their body or their family's body, or that loved one who's constantly in the circle of the being from free to prison, that whole frequency there. How can you, what tools, let me say that, what tools can you give them for them to help to identify what you're saying the rhythm of God is in their life? What tools can they utilize? And then what components of that would you purposely pull to say, like, hey, this is what you need to focus in on and go from there?
Right. I mean, one thing, and I can speak from personal experience. I think if you're a human being walking the face of this earth, there has been something that has resurfaced or been recurring in your life. And if not, like my grandmother used to say, keep living.
Yeah. Right. Keep watching them sunrises and set.
Right. So, for me, number one, it's going back to, first of all, it's identifying those things that are repetitious and the patterns, right? And you have to have a moment of introspection. That's really stopping and self-analyzing. What things what are you doing that bring you back to this point? Oftentimes it's the same result, but different people involved, different circumstances, but the result is still the same. You know how, like, our parents used to say, it can't always be everybody else at some point. Right. So going back to the drawing board, but then also reminding myself of, like, one of my favorite scriptures is Psalms 139.
Mine too.
Like, that to me is the most beautiful reminder of how you were created, how you were fashioned. I mean, just the entire action of knitting something together is very purposeful and intentional. And the outcome is exactly the intention of the actual action, what I mean, of knitting, and that happening and it being by design, reminding yourself that you are not an accident. You have a purpose here.
Yes.
And your purpose is just as meaningful as the patterns in your life, right? Those patterns, that repetition, it exists for a reason. That is what makes you the unique fabric that you are, and to know that all of those days, the Psalms says it right before our eyes, all of those days were ordained,
written in his book,
before any of them ever came to be.
Like, I was like, that's a perfect place to pause and reflect. All of our days
before we ever even came to be,
good, bad, and indifferent.
Good, bad, or indifferent. And I just feel like acknowledging, that part of our creation, that divine creation, to me is really the foundation or the root of what you pivot from. In any life circumstances, understanding that there are different types of rhythms that, like I said, remember how I started in the beginning, that there's a collective rhythm. Some look at it as random, but I think that's the rhythm of God in others' lives that collectively seem like, oh, I don't know why that's happening, or I don't know why that person came into my life, or
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
I don't know why, that else has a rhythm that they're being introduced to as well. Then there's the regular rhythms of our lives that seem like, oh, okay, yeah, I know God, I have a relationship. Because, oftentimes we get very monotonous in
Mm-hmm.
our relationship and encounter with God because nothing is earth shattering. It just seems very regular,
Mm-hmm.
But then I get reminded of, one of my favorite songs is is by William Murphy, Praise is What I Do.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, praise is what I do.
Praise him in all the circumstances, whether good or bad, because that's just what you do. And to me, that is what you apply to the regularity
Mm-hmm.
of life, because we're all good at fasting and praying and calling this person and that person when it's like the end of the feels like the sky is falling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So so just being mindful of the way that these different types of rhythms are coming together in your life. There's all different, there's layers to it.
Yeah. When you said collective rhythm and then like an individual, I keep thinking about flash mobs. Like
You keep going back to, I'm glad you're having this
I am.
with
I really am. Because okay, this is the beauty, the majesty and the power of God at work.
yeah.
Right? So like when I think about a flash mob, I was a part of one of them in high school, and it was so chaotic trying to get everyone to do the same
Same
movement,
thing. Mm-hmm.
right? So what they ended up doing was, because there was different entrance points of the song, that they started to take us and put us in different groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then in our group, we would practice that particular dance. Another group would practice their portion. So then when we came together, everybody knew their portions. Otherwise, you would get distracted looking at what everybody else is doing.
Right.
Right. And so that's why when you mentioned about the rhythm of God, all these things, I mean, I told you I've been feasting on it for a whole week, because I was like, what must that mean and what that looks like? And I've been trying to see in my own life the way he moves. And when you broke it down with repetition, pattern, and then design, right?
Repetition, pattern, and rhythm. There's three elements to design when you're designing anything. Yeah.
Well, when you broke it down that way, you start to see images. For me, I'm a very visual person.
Right.
So I start to see images of things that have happened in my life. And then remember on Animaniacs when they would have the music playing, but you could see the notes in front of it. And that's what I'm seeing. Like, oh, this was a high note. This is a low note. This is the time where it felt like, see, now my mind is still going, because even like in the orchestra.
Right. I think that to me, and because I'm a very visual learner too, like, I love art, anything artistic, and anything that I can attach an image to or a sound to, it really resonates. And when I look at, like I said, even my own personal life, ups and downs, you know what I mean? Peaks and valleys, some parts where it just seems flat or I'm just coasting. If I look at it and compare it to a song or to like something with a rhythm, it's like you find the beauty in that, because even in some of the most the songs that have the most movement, or songs that seem so melancholy, like one of my favorite jazz artists is John Coltrane. I love In a Sentimental Mood. It's that whole arrangement. It's just the melancholy of it and just the thought behind it. If you could play or converge all of these types of sounds with your life story, how can it not be beautiful? Yes, there will be some things that are very sad, you know what I mean? Or like I said, catastrophic, or things that are humbling, and then things that are exhilarating, and things that, you know what I mean, make you just want to bust a move. Like, seriously, like there's every single element to music and sound and instruments in how God has designed or ordained your life. You know what I mean? And that to me, just alone, it's beautiful.
Yeah. It goes the question now, what melody or what do you hear? Let me say that. What are we hearing? You mentioned about looking introspectively and asking yourself about the different repetitions and the patterns that we have done, but even asking yourself, what do you hear? What do you hear your life being? Like, I think over Zephaniah, the prophet says that God was telling Zephaniah that he sings over us, right? Remember old school hymn or old school Negro spirit. I up above my head, I hear music in the air. Like, are we listening?
I don't. I feel and I really believe that if we take the time to sort of slow down and really think about it, it's like, God, I know that at that point, there was a lot of probably grief. You know what I mean? Or I know at this point I was obedient to your will. Or at this point, in my life, I had so much fear or anxiety. Or at this point, I had sadness. You know what I mean? Or full of love. I feel that every single emotion that can be evoked, with rhythm and with song, that literally could be the soundtrack of my life. But as much as, I feel like they say music is the universal language.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, and you can feel and identify with the frequency or the vibration of certain sounds and instruments. And I think that you can apply the same to recognizing that same rhythm and vibration of God within your life, no matter what is going on, even if you're in the midst of something that is horrifying or life changing or life threatening, whether it's an illness or, sickness or death or, things that we sort of want to shy away from or not deal with, that still has a purpose in your life, and I'll say that speaking from experience, a lot of the things that we experience or go through are not planned. If we could plan everything, we wouldn't even be having this conversation,
Right. It would have happened so much longer ago.
It's the acknowledgement and the willingness to accept, the will that God has for your life. And, and that's really what has gotten me or propelled me through a lot of things in my life. And then going back and acknowledging, okay, I see how you were moving there, and thank you. As Bishop Omar always says, God, I love your ways. That's one thing that I always say, like, especially when you have a revelation, it's just like, God, I love your ways,
Chris Lazat, I love his song. I love your ways, I love you. Let's see. I love your ways and I love you. That's the main pieces of his song. And I love that song. Chris Lazat, if anybody's out there listening to watching, definitely download that song or watch it on YouTube. Chris Lazat. It is a beautiful song. But your journey. I mean, you're a young CEO professional. I mean, let me say this. You are sitting in rooms with people who are old enough to be your parent to grandparent. You're sitting at tables dealing with wealth management as a minority woman.
Yeah.
How have you been able to continue to move past all the various experiences that might have bring alone?
Well, I can't say it has been easy. It definitely has not been easy. You know what I mean? And for more ways for more than one reason. A lot of it has to do with just the environment. And like you said, I for a lot of career, I have been the only one. And for a huge part of it, the youngest one. And it's not easy being a woman of color and a Black woman that works in wealth management, especially on the West Coast. If you move to the East Coast or on Wall Street or, even in the Midwest, it's a lot more frequent that you'll see faces like mine, but on the West Coast, not really. So it has not been easy. But nevertheless, you have to persevere. And I have had times where I've questioned, is this what I'm supposed to do? Where I didn't feel qualified, one, because of my background, not my educational background, but what I was accustomed to, or how I was introduced to wealth management. Whereas a lot of my peers, that was their lifestyle from birth.
Yeah.
They were introduced to it before an educational setting at the dinner table, and so a lot of things were very intuitive to them. They could speak about things from personal experience, even if they were young. They had networks that they could sort of, lean on and depend on to sort of propel their career. And so what we see a lot of times in our community, it's not that we necessarily lack the education, but it's the experience or the exposure and also the presence in those rooms. Mm-hmm. So I've always felt that it was a responsibility of mine to bring back that information to the community. You know what I mean? And, that's the random rhythm of my life it's of someone else's life, of me introducing things to them. It could be random, whereas in mine, it's that regular,
right.
pattern, that regular thing, that constant beat or constant sound that you hear that I'm chipping away at, for the last almost 18 years now. But a lot of the thing that gets you over it is time, being consistent and staying true to what your life's purpose is, even though it does get hard. Living in your purpose is not an instant, relief from fear. You know what I mean?
Right.
Loss from any of those things I said, that, like I said in the beginning, that we want to shy away from, but to reaffirm, that you're working in the purpose for your life. I think it only comes by way of being mindful, of the way God is moving and has moved, in my life. And I can say that personally. When I look back over, all these years, I can see how things were leading up to this point, where in that little moment, you may not realize it, that rhythm is chaotic, and you want to get out of it, or you want to change the song, or you want to hear something that sounds familiar, but you have to move through it, Yeah.
And my mind keeps going, because everything you said, I keep hearing, you cannot try to move to somebody else's song or tune.
Right.
Stay in your place. Mm-hmm. But as well as know that the beat don't stop. Like,
no, it doesn't. It's a never ending beat. Does the rhythm change? Yes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Some songs, sometimes it's a fast song, right?
Yeah. Right. But that's
how to dance accordingly. You're not gonna go in there doing the Running Man to, you know what I mean? Like, that's when you're on some random rhythm.
Right. But like, you might be on some booger sugar if you're doing that. But right. I think that, like when you mentioned, the beat is God moving, his presence, and knowing that he doesn't stop. Even when we're in a pandemic where so many people are losing their life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not just to this virus, but to other sicknesses and diseases that were present before. But suicide, drug addictions, and homicide, like all kind of things are happening in people, and there's loss. There's some people who are losing their minds. There's some people who are raging out of control.
Right.
All of these things are happening, but the one constant is God all the time.
Right. And I wholeheartedly agree. Like, there's nothing new under the sun. Have we had a pandemic before? Yes, maybe not in our lifetime. You know what I mean? Have people died from substance abuse or addictions or different afflictions? Absolutely. We have our biblical references to prove it, that it didn't just start with us, But if you are living in this time and have not recognized, I would say that the rhythm to this collective thing has changed over the last 18 months, and you still dancing to that same song from December of 2019, waiting for the new decade to start, like you need to change the station real quick, because we're on a different
Different. It's a different frequency for sure. And my dad always says that because he hears like this statement about new normal, he was like, I'm not going back. I'm not going to a new normal. But the reality is, we all are shifting to a new normal.
Yep.
When did Zoom become the only modality that you would be able to work, church, fellowship, and have birthday parties? You know what I mean? Like
everything, right? And just socialize, period. But there are times where there are quantum shifts that happen, and you have to be prepared for that and be able to I keep going back to this reference of dancing, because I just feel like that is how we move through life. None of us are just stationary. You know what I mean? We're constantly moving. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be. It's humanly impossible.
I'm trying not to say no names. I'm like, but no, girl, remember I told you.
Right. Okay, so by definition, we know people defy the odds all the time. Right?
There we go.
By definition, it's impossible to be stationary. There's some form of movement going on. And my thing is just whether you recognize it or not, the point is to get into the space or the practice, daily, a practice daily of acknowledging how God has moved in your life, and that is in a multitude of ways. That's by the encounters that we have with people that we know and people that we don't know. It's by what we offer to someone else, to those that we do know and that we don't know, and that is the way that God is moving, and all of those things collectively come together to create this melody that I think you can't afford to ignore. To me, it brings about so much reverence and just even deference and humility, you know what I mean? And praise. The list can go on and on and on and on, because I guarantee you that if you were to just play like the soundtrack or talk about how the soundtrack of your life has gone.
Yeah.
Oh
yes. I'm like, it's so many genres. There's a lot of gospel, a lot of R&B, but there was some punk rock,
How can you not be excited about life and your purpose?
Yeah.
If you acknowledge the rhythm that you're moving to.
Yeah. So much. I've been sitting reflecting on that. And then I start thinking about your kids. They're young. I mean, your oldest is in high school, right?
Well, he's a senior now. I know.
Clutching all of my pearls. Are you serious?
Yes.
So you have a young man, a growing young man, and then you have a beautiful, beautiful teenage daughter. How are you helping them be aware of the rhythm of God in their life at a young age?
Well, it's kind of hard because, from a parent's perspective, you recognize certain things in your children, and then I have certain revelations as a parent, but my revelation is not their revelation. You know what I mean? And how they acknowledge God in their lives, they can see a reflection of what I do, and surely I can teach them certain things, but my prayer for them is that they come into the fullness of their own relationship with God, and they're able to identify those things. I can't, as much as I would want to shield them from anything that's harmful or hurtful or saddening, as much as I would want to, I am unable to do that, just because, they are a separate being from me, so, but pointing things out to them, what I mean, as they happen, or, acknowledging certain things, that is the part or the role that I play, and always magnifying the goodness of God in any situation, and being very transparent and also vulnerable. You know what I mean? A lot of times as parents, we don't want to be vulnerable because it's like you're in a position of authority, but it's okay to be vulnerable with your children as well, and share, you know what I mean, certain sentiments and aspects of life that are not easy,
Yes.
with highlighting, you know, the victory
Yeah.
of God in all of that, you know? So, and then, you know, I think also partnering with them in this journey of life.
Mhm.
You know, I'm moving from the role, even with my oldest, of learning how to be more of a partner, advisor, and not an authoritarian. You know what I mean? Which is, it's a hard pill to swallow, because that's my job, is to keep you
Yes.
alive and fed, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, keep you safe and not a
Right,
statistic. Yeah.
just living and breathing, you know. And
Yeah.
so we're moving into a space where those decisions will no longer all be mine, you know. And so it's like moving into an active role of partnership, and, you know, moving to that new rhythm, you know.
Mhm.
And so it's just, it's a dance. It's a beautiful dance, as scary as sometimes may be, you know. And that is what I make, you know, life's experiences synonymous to. That to me is how I highlight the beauty of everyone's journey. And some, we don't know when that journey ends. You know,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, this last 18 months, we've seen some pretty, like, life changing events
Yes. Oh, yes.
really cause a pause, you
Mhm.
know. And it has, like I said, the only way that I'm able to see the beauty in all of that is to look at it rhythmically.
Mhm. Yeah. I love it. I do. I think there's so much, and those that are tuned in, drop something in the chat. Hearts, loves, and likes are always welcome. But let's hear from you. How are you looking? And those that are watching on Facebook or YouTube, how are you examining the rhythm of your life? Or what genre would you say your rhythm of life is going in right now? How is God moving for you? I'd love to see that dropped in. But Andrea, you know, when you mentioned about shifting in the parental place,
Hmm.
and you use one of my favorite words, vulnerability.
Yeah.
You know, Be Healed, the web show itself is a place for us to be vulnerable, transparent, honest, because that's where healing, restoration, and freedom really lies,
Hmm.
when we are willing to be broken
Right.
and talk about the brokenness, and but like you said, highlight the victory.
Hmm. Hmm.
You're not highlighting the brokenness. You're not highlighting the downtrodden, the failure. You're sharing it, but you're celebrating the conquering,
Right.
the steadfast love of God.
Hmm.
That's what we're focusing on. So I love that you're sharing that. I have your book here. Um, one of the, I don't know last time you might have checked it out. But page 79, you talk about intention.
Yeah.
Okay. What are you currently being intentional, or how are you? Yeah, let me say, what area of your life are you currently operating in intention?
You know, I would really have to say I am moving into a space of how I intentionally can be an ally, mentor, or even sponsor, you know, to whether it's anyone that is looking to enter into sort of my sector as far as professional development is concerned, or even,
Mhm.
you know, civically. I lend myself to a lot of volunteer obligations. And as I shared in the beginning, I just feel like it is my responsibility, with having a certain knowledge or skill set, to impart that sort of wisdom, you know,
Mhm.
onto our community as much as possible. So, you know, I feel that I have reached a point to where,
Mhm.
you know, that's the stage that I'm intentionally moving into. You know, how am I serving as an ally, you know,
Yes.
to those that are in the same space?
Mhm.
How am I making myself available, or what am I equipping myself to be an effective mentor or even a sponsor, to someone that is looking to grow in a certain area. And it doesn't have to be even necessarily in the form of wealth management. It could be, just shifting your mindset in general. You know what I mean? When it comes to legacy building, sustainability, even civic or community or philanthropic engagement. That is what I'm intentionally focusing on right now. And still, that all still leads back to introspection. It's a self check-in. Like, how am I making myself available? What am I doing? You know what I mean? That sort of enables me to serve in those roles effectively.
Yeah.
And so that others that encounter me have a holistic experience.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'll do one more from your book.
Sure.
Well, you kind of hit on that one. So, okay. Let's go with relationships. The way in which two or more concepts, objects, and people are connected, of the state of being connected.
Mm-hmm.
What has been your focus for relationships in 2021?
I think it's so interesting that you bring that up because, relationships prior to the pandemic were built in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
And I recently went through this program. It was like an accelerated MBA program that was offered by this publication that I read called The Morning Brew. And one of the speakers, her name was Kat Cole, and she's like the COO of Focus Brands. So, like Cinnabon and she's a really dynamic speaker. And she was talking about like how networking is perceived, and it is so transactional. And we use that term to say, oh, you're building relationships. But really, relationships is not who you know, but it's what you know about who you know, or what people know about you, So to me, it's having that intention behind, again, the transparency, the vulnerability. No matter what business you're working in, it's what do people know about you? That is what builds a relationship. At the very basic level, of course, I have to have credentials to do what I have to do. I have to have licenses. You can't just get around certain educational components. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what do people know about me? What do they know about Andrea? What do they know about my values? Or, what I mean? Like what I stand for, or what I care about. What do they know about my priorities? That is what builds sustainable relationships. And that's across the board. You know what I mean? Whether it's professional relationships, personal relationships, is that transparency. Is not who you know, and having that surface or superficial acquaintanceship. And we have to apply that same thing to our relationship, our spiritual relationship. Our relationship with God is, what do you know about God? Like, what do you really, really know about him? Or do you just know, what you learn on Sundays or the scriptures that are thrown out? Or, how deeply do you know God? And then how vulnerable and transparent and honest are you being in your conversations, are your prayers to God? And to me, that is my focus for 2021, is really the relationships that I do have and that I want to have. What do those people know about me? Who do they know that I am? And getting past, like that superficial layer. And I'm not saying superficial as in, oh, you're fake. I'm saying, that exterior layer that we all have. We all have.
Somebody can look at your Facebook and read and be like, oh, okay,
Right. Like you can go to LinkedIn, you can go to Instagram or Facebook, and you'll see what you think, and we try to have a good representation of ourselves, but it's like you really don't know someone unless you're spending time with them. You know what I mean? And unpacking certain things. And again, that goes from personal, professional, and even your spiritual relationships. Is the time that you put in, to unpack those layers.
Wow. Perfect way for us to bring our show to the close tonight. Sis, I love you.
I love you more.
There's been so many jewels you have dropped. I cannot say how grateful I am without this sounding like completely mushy. But you know, it runs deep. And one of the things I want to give you flowers for, because as I, been launching certain things out, God reminded me of because, you say things like, God, I need to do this. I need this. I need that. Right. And literally God showed me people who are already in my life, who have access and understanding to the very things that I need. And going back to understanding, I don't want to just have relationship connections to anyone. I want it with purpose builders, people who are fellow God chasers. That matters. And so we're going to be having a conversation very shortly, because I'm going to need some guidance on some things. But when you have good counsel, when you, and all of that, going back to how you said the rhythm of God, he brought us together for such a time as this.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm so grateful for. So thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being available.
Did I say no?
Being you. I mean, you could, but I would kill you.
I wouldn't say no. I would never say no to something like this, or to you specifically. You know what I mean? Because you asked me about intention. I know what your intentions are. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I know what your purpose is, even in the Be Healed ministry, and I've known for quite some time. And I know how hard you work at making all of this come to fruition. So I want to say I applaud you, you know what I mean, for not giving up on the way that this rhythm is moving. You know what I mean? And some slow songs.
Girl, like,
and some fast ones that you can't keep.
I'm like, did the song stop? Wait a minute. I'm still on the dance floor. Yeah.
But, just don't stop moving.
Yeah, that's right. I've been quoting Dory so long. Just keep swimming. I'm keep moving. And, I'm grateful for that. I receive that because it's real for us to continue on. I appreciate that. So thank you so much for everyone who tuned in on tonight. My mom says that she's so glad that God rocks her sometime. Of course, I'm hearing, Michael Jackson. I think I'm just in a Michael Jackson mode and a Jackson family mode.
I need you to create the Rhythm of God playlist and share it on your Spotify.
Don't play. I will do that. I sure will. I'll be like, Dre, add your pieces too. Because but that you're onto something with that, because that's definitely something for us to think about. What does it sound like? Right. And whatever the sound is, instead of wanting to change the channel, instead of wanting to, skip a track, come on, somebody.
Yeah.
You better play that whole thing through.
Right.
Stay with it, because you never know what the next song up's gonna feel like, like. Just ride it.
This is not that subscription paid service to Pandora where you can skip the song as many times as you want. No, you gotta ride it out, right?
That's it. Oh, thank you. I need confirmation on so many things.
Thank you.
Love. Well, for all of you all that's tuning in, you know that we are always about 50 to 55 minutes. And so we're about to wrap up, so we can make sure the replay is going to be available for you on Instagram at Camille R. Perry. If you were checking this later, or if you're on YouTube, just hit replay. And if on Facebook, just make sure you just move that little dial back and play it again. But Andrea L. Collins, thank you. VP, soon to be CEO of so many other companies. Definitely check out her book, A Word to the Wise, found on Amazon. It's a great read. It's something that's helpful for everyone involved. And so may God bless you, and may God keep you, and most importantly, may you be healed, set free, and delivered, because, hey, that's what he wants for us. And remember, the beat doesn't stop, because God got something special with your name on it. Until next time, we will see you Tuesday night at 7 p.m. for another episode of Be Healed. Dre, hang out with me for a little bit as we say goodbye to everyone else. Good night.